Hi everyone, my name is Zach, and in this video we will create the main shape of the saddle, we will create the cloth thing which is lying underneath the saddle, and we will also create the wooden parts on the back of the saddle, but the very fine details like the seams and some lines we will add in the next video. Alright, without further words, let's get started. Let's only enable these two layers here, and with Shift A let's add a plane. And now let's resize it to the size we need. For this is pretty helpful if we enable this for a short while. So it starts here somewhere and goes here. Now let's switch to edit mode. Add two loop cuts and this we move down a bit. So it gets a little bit closer to the shape we want. And now let's add the shrink wrap modifier. And as target we choose the main body. Then we hit keep above surface and now let's increase this offset value. And now you can see it hovers above the surface. And now let's just add a few more subdivisions in edit mode with W, subdivide. And then you can see we nearly have what we want. If this is not accurate enough, try the project mode and direction positive and negative. Certainly some of the scales will peek through, but this we can adjust in a short while. Now let's add the multi-resolution modifier. Move this up and click on subdivide, subdivide. Now you can see it projects the details of the creature onto this surface. But unfortunately we have the scales, and in this case scales are separate objects, so we can't include them. But this is not a problem at all. For now let's switch to simple here. So we have a simple deformation with no edge smoothing, and let's subdivide this even higher. And now if we like, we can apply the shrink wrap modifier, and this information will be stored inside the multi-res modifier. Now we can switch to sculpt mode, and this is now multi-resolution sculpting. That means we don't sculpt with dynamic topology, because I don't want to destroy the mesh. And now we can use symmetry if we like and start sculpting some details onto this cloth thing. So it does not have to lie perfectly on the scales, but it should lie pretty close to the body. Here you can see it's pulled down a bit, so let's use the grab brush with a pointy curve and move this down a bit. So I move it down that much that I can see the scales through it, especially on the side area, because then I just have to fix that little areas where the scales are peeking through, but then the cloth is lying pretty close to the surface. So for this I use a clay stripes brush and just paint over these areas here. So if you realize that the symmetry sculpting does not work that well, disable this and just sculpt manually. So now if we like, we can subdivide this even higher and maybe add some interesting folds here and there. For this, let's use the standard sculpt tool brush, make this a more pointy curve, and then as you can see we can add these folds. And now we have to take a look at where we have this stretching. Here something is pulling this down. That means here we have some folds in this direction basically. And I will add folds by just drawing a stroke, and then with Control I can increase the stroke by adding a negative stroke close to the side. Certainly here and there we need to fix some stuff, but yeah, this will already work pretty well. And if the details are still not high enough, certainly you can subdivide this even higher. After we've sculpted this, we will add thickness to this clothing. So if in some areas some little spots are peeking through, this is not a problem at all. So I think this is okay for now. Here you now can control the resolution. Let's set this up to 5 to see the full resolution in this case. And now let's add the solidify modifier. So here with the offset value we can control in which direction this should be thick. Certainly we want to put this upwards. And with the thickness value you can control how thick this should be. Certainly not too much. And now you can see the edges are pretty sharp. For this we can add another subdivision surface modifier after the solidify modifier. But keep in mind then the subdivisions will be even higher. So you can try to lower the subdivisions here and then we still have a pretty nice result. Then over here let's enable smooth shading, and yeah, in this way we have this pretty nice cloth thing pretty fast. If you like, you can save this multi-resolution data which is stored somewhere in this blend file external. So if I click on save external, I call this creature details and save this in the same directory as my blend files are. And the same thing I do with the scales. And from now on, this information are stored externally. So, and if I now save this blend file, instead of 600 megabyte, this is only 100 megabyte big. So quite an improvement. And the cool thing is, if I now save this in versions like version 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on, it always links to the one file we have here and it basically updates in all the other versions. So since we're now using the same multi-res sculpting information all the time, we don't need to save them inside the blend file. So the next big thing is the saddle. Certainly for this I would enable the character here, and we have this base mesh already. So let's hide the other stuff. And since I have no idea how a saddle looks like, I have downloaded some reference images from Pixabay. And I guess here we can see quite well how such a saddle will look like. But I guess we won't make it so complicated, and since this is a fantasy creature, we can also create a fantasy saddle. So it doesn't have to look perfectly like this. Let's also check the concept art once again. We have back here this thing which is going up and in the front here, and then we have this wooden parts. And also down here we have some parts. So let's try to create something like this. So let's hit slash on the numpad, apply the subsurf modifier, switch to sculpt mode, and certainly here we will use dynamic topology. And let's start with the lower resolution, certainly with symmetry on. Yeah, I think this is fine. And now let's, as first thing, sculpt the basic shapes. So in the front here we have some parts which are going down. For this we can use a snakehook brush, for example, with a smooth curve. Push this down a bit. And then adjust the stuff. So this is what I have so far. Now let's check if this also works with the character, because this is the most important stuff here. Let's move this down a bit. And then we can see that we, for example, can move this part here on the side up. For this I use a grab brush. Okay, now let's put something underneath the saddle. Basically this brown thing here, which is connected to the saddle. For this, I add a new plane. And from the top view, I basically shape this in the way I would like to have it. Let's also add a subsurf modifier to have a better control over the shape with some smooth edges. Now let's project this shape on this claw thing here. This is called plane. So let's add the shrink wrap modifier. Click on this object. And as projection method, because right now this looks pretty ugly, let's use projection and enable this negative direction. Then you can see we have pretty the same shape as before, just projected on the surface here. And now let's add the solidify modifier, crank this up, and after this an additional subsurf modifier. Now we have this pretty nice shape. We can move the saddle a bit up, and also certainly we can always change this here. And instead of this subsurf modifier up here, we can also use the multi-resolution modifier. So let's subdivide this by 2. Then we can apply the shrink wrap modifier. And similar to the claw thing down here, we can now sculpt on this. But certainly we will not sculpt on the solidify modifier thing, only on the claw thing underneath this. And if the subdivision is not high enough, certainly add some subdivision levels here. And also we will not sculpt using dynamic topology. But yeah, I think this is already pretty nice. We just can add a few deformations here and there if we like. So with all the shapes on, with all the scales and so on enabled, you can see this is what we have now. And I guess we have to change the pose of this guy, just move him up a bit. Now let's add these wooden parts back here. For this I use a simple trick. I add the plane, add a mirror modifier, and a skin modifier. After the skin modifier I add the subsurf modifier. And now I basically can adjust these edges here and create some wooden sticks. So with Ctrl A, let's scale this down and let's delete 2 vertices and mark one as root. This is important, otherwise the mesh won't show up. And now let's put some sticks in here. And if you want to have a smooth transition between the edges, you should add a subsurf modifier over the skin modifier. So this is nearly shoulder high, as you can see. So let's put this up. And also we have these wooden parts in between. So this is just there to support the luggage so that it's not falling down. So if we like, we can just duplicate a vertex, extrude it, and let's reset the root. And for the mirror modifier, let's enable clipping. And then if I move this together here, then it will stick at the mirroring axis. And with Ctrl A, I can scale this down. And in this case, I put them a little bit behind the other 2 sticks. Then it looks a little bit more like this whole thing is handmade. And certainly the sticks should not look exactly the same. So, and I think it's pretty nice if we have this supporting thing down here as well. So it looks a little bit nicer. So, and now we want to make this look like wood. So let's select this. First of all, let's apply all the modifier. Let's increase the subdivisions here so we have a higher resolution. Let's apply this. And now you can see we still have this wrong normals thing here. So let's switch to edit mode, select everything, Ctrl N to make normals consistent. And now you can see we don't have these black spots anymore. And I also will separate these things and these things. Better for sculpting. So let's select all of them. Press P selection. And then we have the other two sticks here. Okay, I would say for this thing also let's flood fill this with 200 resolution. Also smoothing this a bit. And the same thing for these things here. So now let's select this here, switch to sculpt mode, dynamic topology we turn off. Then let's check the symmetry, looks fine. And now let's simply adjust this a bit using the clay stripes. We add this little deformation up here. And basically the main thing we do is with the crease brush, or if we like, we can use a sharp crease brush to add these lines here. So it looks a little bit more like wood. And with our details brush, or in this case the destruction brush, we can also add some additional little details. Okay, let's do the same thing for these things here. Switch to sculpt mode and let's adjust this. And this looks like wood. So we definitely have to add some more details to the saddle and the other stuff here. Here, for example, we can add a bevel modifier, put this over the last subsurf modifier, and then we can sharpen the edges. Let's set the limit method to angle, so not all the edges will be beveled. So basically we have a sharp edge here now. So let's get back to the saddle here. Let's use a grab brush and move this parse here a bit up. Yeah guys, this far I want to go in this video with the saddle. It's not done yet, because in the next video I show you how to add the very fine details like seams and some lines and so on.